quantify it. I would say the part that I see most businesses struggle with is education, is how to use the resources and opportunities that are available. We have, capital access opportunities. We have contract opportunities. We have all these different opportunities available in this city. But if our business owners are not educated in how to take advantage of those opportunities, we continue to perpetuate underutilization of small businesses.
Thank you.
And I would just add, from my time over the last 2 years with United Way, having the chance to talk to entrepreneurs in a number of sectors, I've heard a lot about marketing, especially for small businesses. How do they understand social media and all of the different resources that are available to get the word out to their business has been a major challenge that I've heard. And I would agree that access to capital is one. And also understanding the business model. How are you really clear on your business concept? Understanding the marketplace, the competition that you may have, and really stress testing your idea to make sure that it is sound based on the realities of where the market is something else that I would add.
Okay. And I agree. James, United Way is known for addressing root causes. How does entrepreneurship fit into the broader mission of economic equity and social mobility?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, nonprofit space is, and as United Way, known as being a large philanthropic force in Northeast Florida. One thing that we've had to stress in the last few years is that just because United Way is a nonprofit entity, and we do a lot of grant making directly to other nonprofits as a backbone, we're not excluded to only giving money to nonprofits. And so thinking about how are we creating opportunities to take capital and make smart investments via grants and other ways to support that. And an example is we've really struggled with affordable housing. It's a crisis, and we have thought differently about how we take the resources that we have to get them deployed into the marketplace to spur further development, whether that's grant making directly to organizations and they're not having to go through an application process, or thinking about creating a loan fund where developers can access capital that are at interest rates lower than what the market is really asking for. Those are things that is incumbent upon us to be flexible. And I've really challenged our organization to think differently about grant making because historically we've been positioned to give to the large name nonprofits that you hear a lot about. And so how are we doing test runs of micro grants? So we've done several rounds of micro grants to smaller organizations and even some that are not even 501c3s yet, just to get them the experience of getting a grant award. How do you understand the application process? How are you understanding the reporting requirements? And that gives you something in your back pocket that then allows you to go and apply for more dollars. And I think that's a requirement of the nonprofit sector, especially larger nonprofits like the ones that I lead, to be responsive to listening to the community and then making those changes.
Thank you. Just to follow up, Wealth Watchers is a small and upcoming nonprofit that can always
Good plug. I see Gary right there too.
That can always benefit from some grant dollars. 501c3. But anyway,
we'll talk after.
Y'all did hear my title was CFO. I'm always about the dollars. Okay, Travis, a question for you. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who want their businesses to? No, wrong question. Gregory, what city resources are available right now for aspiring entrepreneurs, and how can they best access or take advantage of them?
That's a great question. So I want to lead with, serving under the mayor, Donna Deegan. She has a bold mission of wanting Jacksonville to be the small business capital of the Southeast. That is her mission, and we are tasked with making sure that happens. This is a critical time in administration because this is, in my opinion, one of the first times that the administration has put dollars behind making small businesses successful in this city. So there's a couple programs that are available right now, and then there are a few programs that are coming up. Number one, I would highly advise for-profit businesses to become JSEB certified. If you become JSEB certified, we have our own capital that we can provide to JSEB contractors. Last year, 2024, my department awarded $600,000 directly to small businesses, micro businesses. This year, we've already, I think we're at $400,000, so close to $1 million that we've given to small businesses in our city for microloans, and they are only at 4%. Now, I say microloans, a lot of times people think, oh, it's $5,000, it's $10,000. No, these are up to $100,000 at 4%. Right now, I'm in city council right now, and I would advise all of you to come to our special committee meeting in City Hall on April the 17th. I'm asking for $5 million in capital right now for our small businesses. So the city has taken bold steps in making sure that we provide access to capital opportunities for for-profit businesses. We also have awarded nearly $200,000 in small business grants for tangible assets, up to $5,000. In about 2 months from now, we're going to be relaunching a program for veterans for grants as well, up to $2,000. In another 3 months, we will be opening up another capital access for $650,000 that's going to be coming up. So the city is really trying to invest in the small business community. We are also getting ready to open up 4 entrepreneurship education and workforce development centers across the city of Jacksonville. One of them will be opening on next month during Small Business Week. We are placing these strategically in the community because we want to make sure that the community have access to these resources. One of the locations is on Gulf Air Boulevard, right across from Kipp School. The second location is on the east side, inside of the Phoenix Arts District. The third location is in the downtown library. Fourth location is at Cecil Field, and we're working on the 5th location on the south side. This is the first time that the city has created its own entrepreneurship education platform for our small businesses. So I would say take advantage of it. Going to these centers is where you will learn how to do business with the city as well. Because one of the things we want to do, we always hear that large companies seem to get all of the contracts. Large companies seem to get all of the resources. So we want to be able to unbundle those opportunities through education and through resources to make sure that small businesses are successful. Last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to give some props to Councilman Freeman. We was able to pass legislation 2 weeks ago to now also include nonprofits in the JSEB certification program. So the same exact way that we resource for-profit businesses, we're now resourcing nonprofit businesses as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's huge.
That is. So thank you guys for that wealth of information. So this is the question, because you both talked about opportunities that individuals have. What obstacles or what mistakes have you seen them make when trying to go through some of your processes? Either one of you guys can take it.
So in terms of, and so I'm going to speak from the perspective first from my experience with the Small Business Development Center. Anybody ever heard of the Small Business Development Center? Absolutely. So I used to be one of the assistant directors there, and we would have small businesses come in to get consulting services. And one of the things I learned at that particular instance is that a lot of times business owners overcomplicate the system. Or they overcomplicate their message, overcomplicate their services. So one thing I want to say, and if you're writing, write this phrase down: simplify to amplify. Simplify to amplify. The more you simplify your message, the more you simplify what you're doing, it shows clarity, and it's easier for us to work with you as an organization and as an agency. Now I'm going to talk about the city opportunities for a second. On the city side, my department, we set aside contracts specifically for small businesses. These contracts are now also being based on tiers. What that simply means is that we classify all small businesses based on their annual revenue. So a tier 1 JSEB is a business that makes less than $300,000 a year. A tier 2 business make between $300,000 and $1 million. and a tier 3 makes over $1 million in revenue. That's important because the way that we work with that business is different. Our job is to move you from one tier to the next. And every single tier requires a different knowledge level. So the other thing I'm going to say is embrace patience of learning. A lot of times entrepreneurs want to go from 0 to Donald Trump level within one day, within 1 year. Have patience. Patient intelligence is very important as you grow in business. So that's one of the things I'm going to say. The last thing I'm going to say is on the contract opportunities in Jacksonville, if you do choose to become JSEP certified, there is a 20% goal that we have that we must achieve. In my office, I'm really hard on them about making sure we achieve this 20% goal because we set these contracts aside specifically for small businesses. Here's the mistakes that I see oftentimes. There is sometimes a lack in education on how the bidding process works. There is also maybe some education needs on how to estimate, how to price. Sometimes I look at some of the RFPs and a lot of the smaller companies, the pricing is just all the way out of whack. So one of the things I would suggest, and I'll give you this tidbit, because some people say, well, Mr. Grant, how do I price? How do I determine the price of my product or service with the government? I always start it with know what your profit margin standard is. Okay? You don't want to try to make a 60% profit in one go on one contract. We want to be reasonable on what your profit margin standard is and use cost plus pricing methods in the beginning. So I'll stop there because I can talk forever.
So to add, I would add, it's important on the nonprofit side to understand that nonprofit organizations are businesses and they are a driving force in our economy. There are about 100,000 employees in Jacksonville that work for nonprofits. 60% of nonprofits, though, have a budget annually of less than $500,000. So many of them are relatively small. They have great missions and they do great work. But I think there's a misconception around the bandwidth of resources that many of the nonprofits in our sector have. And that has increased, especially since the pandemic. The number of nonprofits has increased significantly. What I noticed being a grant maker, I oftentimes have conversations with people who have, to Gregory's point, not done their homework, and they lack the drive to really focus on relationships. So there's nothing outside of reaching out to say, hey, I would love to ask some questions and have coffee with you, just to learn about you and your work and then learn about your organization. And you also can do research on the last 5 grants that I've given out and ask questions about those. And then think about how you may align to the mission and the vision of the organization. And then knowing your organization itself is important. So are you actually ready for this opportunity? If an RFP comes out and it's live, I oftentimes get pitches directly, and to Gregory's point, people not knowing the whole process. So, have you really done the homework? Do you have a logic model? Do you know what a logic model is? Do you have goals? Do you have a mission and a vision? And what's your track record been? What is your organization's resume in doing the work in the space, and how can you articulate that? Because I'm open to give advice. Obviously, that's limited, even though there's some distance that I have in terms of making decisions on funding. I'm able to really give people advice. And so there have been some folks who've reached out and we've had coffee and I've gave them clear examples of what has happened in the past. Like, can you do a strong budget? Are you able to really do a strong narrative and talk about the history of your organization, your past performance? What would you do with this funding? What difference will it make? Have you done research on your model? What evidence-based practices inform your work? And then I can share some thoughts on what I've seen in the past, and people have taken that advice and been successful through grant processes. And so I would say really just knowing who the players are, and a Google search and even using AI can quickly tell you who's who, what organizations are doing what, and you can easily reach out on LinkedIn or whatever it means to actually make contact with people to understand more deeply their processes and their work before you even attempt to go for funding.
And to piggyback on that, I would tell you with the grant writing process, sometimes it's simply answering a question. A lot of people have their story already put together in their head, and they just keep regurgitating the same thing, but it doesn't fit the needs of what the grant is asking for. So it's always really important to answer the questions that every point they tell you to cover, to answer that specific question. So that's just something I just wanted to add on that. We're getting ready to wrap up pretty soon, but question, do you guys have a success story that you can share of any entrepreneur that you've helped and what made it successful?
Yeah, so I have a lot of success stories, but I'll share one that was really kind of recent. So we had a entrepreneur, and I won't say their name, but they have been in our JSAP program for several years. And over the years, what I've heard a lot is that, hey, this program has been around for a long time, but I haven't gotten a contract. I've been doing this for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, never got a contract. So I came into our office, and I began working with this individual, and we were able to successfully help this individual get their very first seven-figure contract. And when I said earlier about going from one tier to the next, that's what it's all about. And it's not just getting the contract. We focus in JSAB in 5 areas. We focus on legislative advocacy, education equity, community engagement, capital access, and contract equity. Once this business received the seven-figure contract, as business owners, what we also know is that growth costs money. Growth costs money. So not only did we help them receive that seven-figure contract, but then we provided them capital access so they can perform on that contract well. We also paired them with our resource partners to make sure they were staff ready, because when you grow, guess what? Your staff will also need to grow. So this is, again, part of the commitment of our city to our small businesses. So make sure you leverage us.
Yeah, a success story that I would share is we did a grant process last year that I led. We did $4.5 million in grant funding focused on education, workforce development, food, and housing, mainly helping people to avoid homelessness. And that grant process typically has been the big players at the table, larger organizations who are more established getting funding. But I was able to do some outreach and connect with a younger organization that's doing work with young girls in the community. They went through the process. They came to our informational, got all the details of the RFP, and they went through the process and they got grant funding. They're one of the smallest organizations in our grant portfolio, and probably one of few that have gotten funding in the last 5 or 6 years from us. So it was really groundbreaking to see a smaller nonprofit that's budget is less than $500,000, but it's doing great work. They have office space in Arlington, doing great programming with young girls, and they just came prepared, and they won. And I was really excited. I went to their office and visited their meeting space, met some of their alumni from their program, got to do a presentation and hear all the work that they've been doing. And it just reaffirmed how valuable it is to think about the full spectrum of those who are doing the work and not just the more established organizations. And I think that helps leverage her to go after other dollars and then even come back after this grant cycle is over to go for an even bigger ask next time.
Okay. Well, as we wrap up, I want to thank you guys for the great work you're doing to move our city forward and to help young entrepreneurs to get their businesses established and help them grow it. So before we leave, can I get you guys to give out your information and, excuse me, and tell whether you'll be hanging around today if someone wants to come up and ask questions, or how they can reach you in the future if they just have some questions. And I ask of the audience, have your questions together when you come to them. Know what you're, excuse me, guys, I'm sorry. Know what you're asking. Oh, that was real froggy. That's the word. I said, so I asked of you guys to know what your ask is, because they're very busy and they have to speak, they have their jobs to do and speak with lots of people. So come prepared with your questions, if not today or whenever you do engage them. That's very important. So
I'm fortunate that I have a really great team, and so for me, I delegate ownership to my team. They have ownership of their area. So I'm going to ask Adam Dillon to stand up. Okay, he is tasked to be here mostly all day, and feel free to barrage him with all of your questions. With anything you need, go tackle him, and he'll make sure that he take care of you, okay?
So I'm a solo show. I don't have a counterpart. But yeah, I will be sticking around. You easily can find me, James Elliott, last name spelled Ellout on LinkedIn. United Way Northeast Florida is our website. Contact information is also there to reach out. But I will be sticking around to have conversations later on today. And I would lastly say the nonprofit space is definitely changing. This concept of impact investing is growing. And nonprofits are thinking about, how can I make a difference, support my mission by transforming the community. Some of it may be in the avenue of making contributions to a for-profit entity, to those who are social entrepreneurs, but I'm getting a small return back on that investment. And so I think that's something that is growing that people, they definitely need to think about, because nonprofits are thinking about how they can get a return, though modest, connected to their mission, and they're looking for businesses to do that through.
Yeah. And to follow up on that, the president of my great organization always like to say, nonprofit does not mean we cannot make a profit. It is a tax status. Okay. So I want to thank you guys for taking your time out early this morning and joining us. So I appreciate your
Thank you.
time.